Oh, come on, quick. No intro music. That's bound to be something I've done. Sorry, I've got my hood up. I'm looking all Lord of the Rings, but I'm desperately in need of a haircut. So we've gone immediately live with no music. So I will pad a little at the beginning to allow people to join the live stream if they are free. If they are not free, you will doubtless be watching this back later. So I wanted to do... Actually, I didn't have any intention of doing a live stream video. And then one of my patrons messaged and said, will we be getting any live stream on the retained list? And I personally am not on the podcast this evening. I think it's Chris and Ben. So I thought I would put my two pennies worth, not just in the written format, but some of you I know prefer the visual format for some reason. Not sure there's an awful lot to look at. So the retained list came out last night. Very ironic. I'd been out for a run because I run. And at 6 o'clock, my dad rang me, or at 5:30, my dad rang me and went, "Oh, no, about the retained list, boy." And I went, "No, we haven't yet, Dad, but it'll be out. Don't you worry." I literally hung up the phone, and a WhatsApp came through saying the retained list's out. So yeah, brilliant. Well, the retained list is coming out, so I got it on embargo, and I had a chance to prepare my article. Now, people are saying, well, there's no real surprises, there's none of this, there's none of that. I think there is a surprise on there, and I think it's a pleasant surprise, because I'm going to start with the positives, not the negatives. It's really easy to talk about the negatives, or people perceive to be negatives. I think that's probably a fairer thing to say. By the way, if the wind gets too much, let me know. It's turned windy again up here in the Wolds in a minute. So, for me, the pleasant surprise is Adam Jackson staying. I really like Adam Jackson. I think he's a great footballer on his day. I think he's a great defender on his day. There's very different definitions of great footballer. But I think he's a great defender. I think he looks quite comfortable in a flat back four. Funnily enough, I think the flat back four actually provides a little bit more protection for the two centre backs, because your fullbacks are more defensively minded, so you're not likely to get drawn out of position. And also, there's less emphasis on you needing to play, those big 50-yard balls or carry the ball confidently out of defence, because it's a little bit tighter. I think your roles are a little bit more defined as a centre back in a flat back four, and I think Adam Jackson's attributes reflect that. He's still a young man. It's easy to forget that he came in the 2021 season, which will mean that this will be his fifth full season. I mean, I'm really bad with things like that now. Might be sixth, 2 under Appleton, 1 under Kennedy, 1 under Hartford. So this will be sixth full season for the Imps. 164 appearances, I think, in total, which means he's coming up to, if he were to play, let's say, 36 times League and Cup next season. I think it's 36 or 34. I think it's 164, so 36. He'd join a 200 club. And that would put him right up there with some of the best and longest serving players in terms of appearances that Lincoln City have had, over the last 20, 30 years. That's a real testament to him. When you think about the injuries he's battled, he had an injury hit season last season, Adam Jackson. He obviously got poleaxed at Rotherham and missed a large part of the season. A couple of years ago, he had 3 concussions in a row. When he first came, we used to see him every other week. So he hasn't had a good run of injuries. But when he plays, I think he's a good player. And to talk to Adam kind of away from the pitch, you actually find out that he is a really, really nice guy. He's down to earth. He gets it. I was at the awards dinner, luckily enough, the other night as a guest of the foundation for the as a thank you for the London Marathon run, which was very, very kind. And Adam I'm not a fanboy. Like, if I see a player, I don't go up to him and go, "Oh, hello." But Adam actually came to me, and it's kind of I saw a lot of the other players are good guys as well. I'm not about singling him out, because in my experience, he's one that I bet he's just such a great guy behind the scenes. I bet he's so calm, reflective, kind of a balance between that kind of reactive anger and that just laid back kind of, he cares, but he cares in the right way. So I'm really pleased that Adam Jackson's staying. There were some question marks from some over whether Ben House would stay. It's been a tougher season for Ben. I think if you judge him just on his goals output, it's really easy to say he's not had a good season. But actually, he's a terrifically hard worker. And in the 4-2-3-1, I think that is a quality that gets probably more praise than it does in the 3-5-2. If you're just a hard worker in a 2, but you're not getting the goals or you're not always getting on the ball, you're doing lots of chasing, that can leave the other 1 feeling quite isolated, and there's not a lot of other players then around. In 3-5-2, it's about 2 strikers playing together. Whereas when you're in a 4-2-3-1, you've got 2 wide players quite a bit higher as well. So it can almost, at some points, become like a 4-3-3, depending on how deep that kind of 10 role drops back into the midfield. It's very flexible, and it's a formation I particularly liked because it's not unlike what Michael Appleton played in the first season that he was here. It's a formation that I quite like. So I think the hard-working striker who doesn't quite get as many goals to his game has a place in the squad, and if that's the case, there's none better than Ben House. Nobody can ever question Ben House's application. Never. His attitude, off the pitch, he's another one that's quiet, quite reserved, but on the pitch he becomes an animal. Players like that are actually really important, I think, as well. Yeah, he does occasionally, let's be honest, pick up yellow cards that perhaps he shouldn't, but these are relatively minor things. The question you have to ask yourself is a League One squad playing 4-2-3-1 better off with a Ben House in it or not? And the answer is yes. Is a League One team relying on Ben House as their main source of goals going to finish in the top 6? Probably not. So I think it's the right decision. He stays around the club. We've triggered the 1-year extension. He's a hard worker. There's a place for him in certain games. We tend to see that he plays in games where there's going to be a lot of chasing, harassing and harrying when teams play out from the back, like a Huddersfield, like a Birmingham, where obviously we don't have Birmingham next year, but where you don't want their defenders to have time on the ball and their defenders want to have time on the ball. And that's where Ben House comes in. And these days, you've got it's horses for courses. You've got to have the right tools for certain games. People always say never change a winning team, but if you've just battered Bristol Rovers 5-0, it's Birmingham next. The likelihood is that team may change because what you do is different for those 2 games. And I don't think everybody always tends to understand that. I don't think they always tend to understand how it isn't just how you set up that defines how you play. Unless you're a team like Wrexham, pretty much set up not to get beat this season and did really well with it. But they were good, then had the quality to be able to unlock and unpick the likes of Shrewsbury and Crawley and Cambridge and to win those sorts of games. Whereas I think that's where we probably failed a little bit. When we were under Mark Kennedy, we were really great. We were really defensive, but we couldn't score for shit. Under Michael Appleton, we could mix it with the big teams. We could beat anybody on our day, but we just didn't have a plan B when a plan B was demanded. I'd like to think Ben House plays into that plan B. So they're the 2 that are staying. Obviously, there's talk about Paudie O'Connor and Sean Rowan. There's not a lot more I can add on here. I'd just say I'd be really surprised if Sean Rowan goes to Bolton, particularly. But I can understand that both players probably want to test themselves in the Championship. Their question that they've got to ask themselves and their agent is what's their best routes there. And I think both of them have a different route to the Championship. I think with Paudie, unless somebody is going to come in and guarantee him football, and I'm going to say Preston, for instance, he could find himself stepping up to the Championship and then dropping down, not getting the games that he wants. Whereas if he goes to a top-end League One team, and I'm talking a seriously top-end League One team, Luton, for instance, who you would imagine will be top 2 and fighting for that, I would imagine that's a move that he might take because he's 27, so he could be 28 when he's coming out of the next season, going into the Championship as part of a promoted team. That would make sense. With Sean Rowan, I think he's a little bit different. Sean's younger, but if he makes a sidestep move now in League One to a team like Bolton, who, let's face it, when they fail, it's a miserable failure. If Bolton finish 7th, it's akin to us finishing 19th in their mind. It doesn't matter that they didn't get in the top 6 by however many points, a couple of points or whatever. What matters is they didn't make it. And so the fear of failure at teams like Huddersfield and Bolton is massive. And for a young lad, 23, moving clubs, you can become a focal point for that. Sean's established here. We know he's a good player. We know he's a flexible player. We know all we need to know about Sean Rowan. As soon as he goes, he's nobody. He's 22-year-old, coming from Lincoln City with a bit of a reputation. Just ask Lasse Sorensen. Just ask Well, not Lucas Jensen because he's done all right. But yeah, Lasse Sorensen probably. You go somewhere. Theo Eden. You make that step, you've got to be able to prove yourself. I think it would be easier for Sean Rowan to make that step to a championship level club. And again, I'm talking Preston, Stoke, Hull, somewhere like that. Probably a Stoke. You play 3 across the back so he can play on the left-sided centre back, his favoured position. But if he's in and out of the side for 6 months, a year, it's not damaging to his reputation because he's still stepped up. Whereas if he goes to a Huddersfield or a Bolton and he's in and out of the side for any reason, then that's a little bit different, I think. So it's going to be really interesting. Going to be really interesting to see. Malcolm's just pointed out actually that I don't know why they do that. There we go. Malcolm's pointed out that O'Connor is 28 this July, so he would actually be 29. But at 29, you'd still be stepping up, I think, into the Championship with another club. So yeah. There we go. So the players that are going. So Tyler Walker departing surprises nobody, mainly because I think most fans had forgot that he was here. Now, I'm not going to be scathing to Tyler. It's just a bad situation. Like, I know when we signed him, conversations that I have had around the club were, look, this could be quite difficult because, he's got an injury record. But it's the sort of injury record that you might take a bit of a risk on, as we did with Michael O'Connor, as we did with Neil Eardley. We brought those players in and there was no hint of injury in the past. They got straight on with it. So we needed a striker. We wanted a talismanic striker. Walker's signing was, at the time, big news. I was utterly delighted. He started, it was a tough start and these injuries would have happened anyway, but I remember back to a game, it was either Blackpool or Wickham at home. We won 3-0 and we got a penalty and Ted Bishop snatched it away from Tyler and took the penalty. And that really bothered me. It bothered me at the time. I mentioned it at the time and I've mentioned it a lot ever since. Tyler needed a goal to get going. And he should have taken that penalty, in my opinion. So we've got his goal and who knows, would he have stayed injury free? Probably not. Scoring a penalty doesn't affect how your body reacts. But I do just like to think that might have been a little bit more confidence. You don't know what would have happened. I know that wouldn't have prevented the injury, so maybe it's a pointless conversation. But what I would say is Tyler's a human being. And his entire career has been put into question because of his injuries. And you think 6-7 years ago, he was right up there. He'd done what he did at Mansfield. He came and did what he did for us. He made his £1 million move to Coventry. He was right up there. And now he's gone to Wealdstone, scored once, picked up an injury. Where does he go now? I feel desperately, desperately sad for Tyler Walker. And all these comments on social media about Weetabix slags and get rid and all of that. I understand where they come from. But at the end of the day, he is a human being. And I feel really bad for him. So there we go. Next up, let's take Jay Ben. So Jay Ben, I think I heard stories that Jay would go away. He went away to Solihull Moors with a view of coming back and expecting to be at a certain level. He came back from Solihull Moors, a really good loan spell for him. He'd got to that level, walked in, second, third day of training, realised that actually the level had now gone up. There's an interesting story about Jay Ben and Mark Kennedy, which I can't tell really because it was told to me in confidence. But I think he had a little bit of a rough time under Kennedy before Kennedy was fired as well. So, yeah, I think with Jay, it's literally just we took a punt on a player. He came in and he's not quite there. If he'd gone to Bradford and played 40 games in their promotion, there might be a reason for us offering him a contract. But I think the thing with Jay is that we've just looked at it and gone, do you know what? Yep. Come to the end of our journey. We signed you when we were at one point. We're at another point. Hopefully, he'll use his Lincoln City experience as a springboard to get back into League Two. He was certainly a very good player in the Championship. Solihull Moors must surely be thinking about looking at him. I think he'll have a decent enough career. You'll keep hearing about Jay Ben. He'll be one of those ex-imps that he might catch, like a Tom Miller or something like that, where he catches and you go, oh, we could have done something with him. Or he'll have a season in the National League, play 15 games and continue to drop down. But I think he'll be a stalwart of League Two and the National League over the next couple of seasons. So hopefully, fair play to him. Ali Smith. Now, Ali Smith's really interesting. Really interesting because he was decent when he went to Colchester on loan. So he played almost every game for us up until he didn't. But he was playing out of position. He didn't look great. There was times where I thought he really lacked effort. And I haven't said that about very many players at Lincoln City in the past. It was once or twice where you were just like, there was tracking back in an away game. It might have been Blackpool on New Year's Day. I remember just seeing it thinking that's just not good enough. And I've only thought that about him and the Tashan Oakley booze against Barnsley at home when Tashan came on for 10 minutes and was utterly atrocious. And I never like to think that about our own players. And he went to Colchester. He did really well at Colchester. My understanding is that he was wanted permanently by Wimbledon in the summer. But he's a confident lad. He believes in his ability. Thought he'd have a good season. Didn't know what the future held. Best to leave his options open. He's still young now. So he's had a really good season at Wimbledon. I was chatting to Chris last night about it while we were playing pool. I think it's 6 goals, 2 assists. But he's been a real pivotal part of their entire setup. They've done really well with him. They could be getting promoted. They're in the playoffs. I think they're 1-0 up against Notts County, potentially with Walsall to meet in the final. I said I fancied Wimbledon to come up. Do wonder if they come up, maybe will they take Ali Smith? People might say, well, he's had a good season, we could offer him a contract, but we've got to think about financial outlay and sensibly using what we have available. And that brings me on to another player in a moment, of course. So again, Ali Smith will inevitably end up getting a League Two role, potentially a League One role. And if he gets a League One role, he will inevitably end up scoring a 25-yard screamer past us at Sincil Bank and doing fuck all else for the team, because that's what happens in football, isn't it? But again, I really wish him well. Obviously, we've got some of the Sam Clucas stuff. So Josh Russell here. Oh, I can't believe I've got a show on stage all the time for this. It's rubbish. So he's tweeted about Sam being mistreated, and apparently Sam liked to tweet himself, so all is not well behind the scenes. It's an assumption to make. I'm not going to say I know whether it is or whether it isn't. I'm not going to say whether I think Sam was brought here under false pretenses or not. I think that the statement that was put out when he signed did make it clear that it was potentially to play, but potentially with one eye on other roles. Told Sam definitely still wants to continue his playing career, and we don't see a role for him. I think mistreated, Josh, I'll get on with you. So I think mistreated's harsh. Michael Appleton mistreated players when it was revealed that Lee Frecklington and Tom Pett and the other boy who was a left back, Ben Coker, were training on their own. I don't think that's mistreating when you come in and you don't play. I think you're mistreated if you're frozen out completely. He did play 8 times for us. All I'll say is those with Sam Clucas tinted spectacles on, and fair play, because everyone's entitled to an opinion, going on about he never let us down, but he did give away a silly penalty against Birmingham where we would have got a point. Don't get me wrong, he's not the only player to have done that, is he, to have done something silly and cost us points. In fact, he's probably a shorter list of players who have not done something silly and cost us points. I'm going to strip away the local lad does good rhetoric, because if I'm honest, I was mega fired up when Sam Clucas came in. I had this imagination, this image rather, of him coming in, sitting in the base of our midfield, 3 assists and 4 goals by the end of the season, still got it, strutting around. He came on in a game, I can't remember who it was against, scored, and it was disallowed because Jovan had pushed somebody over in the area. And I thought, do you know what, he's got it. He's absolutely got it in these little cameos. And he didn't play. Is there more to the story? Do you know what? There might be. And when I say more to the story, I'm not talking about Jess signed him and Michael didn't want him. I'm not talking about he's been frozen out because somebody doesn't like him. But there must be a reason he didn't play a little bit more, because Ethan Arahan was injured. We didn't really have another number 6. If we did sign him to cover for Arahan and then Arahan gets injured, you expect to see him more. What I will say is, remember that our budget in January, when we went into January, we were 19th in the division. When we came out of January, 17th in the division. So it suggests that we spent a little bit of money, and we brought in James Collins, Sam Clucas and Joe Gardner. So there's an outlay there. Detractors will say, why make that outlay if he wasn't going to play? Well, he played 8 games and scored a goal. So it's not like a James Brown or a Lee Angol situation. If we hadn't brought him in and we had sold a Rahan, and there was, I think, another midfielder who's been mentioned, I don't know who that is. Wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't Ethan Hamilton, because he's great when he's on his form. And then we hadn't got the cover, I could imagine criticism, then why haven't we got the cover? It's a damned if you do, damned if you don't. And the problem here is nothing to do with signing a former Premier League player who was playing in the National League. The problem's nothing to do with that. The problem here is because we have signed a local boy who had history with the Lincoln City Football Club, and we wanted, as fans, a fairy tale, because that's what football is. Football is a story. It's an ongoing narrative. It's a soap opera. We want our heroes to win. We want our villains to lose. And Sam Clucas, even with me, has always been the one that got away. I criticised Chris Sutton till I was blue in the face for letting a player go who was late and moved for £20 million here, there and everywhere. So I would be a hypocrite if I didn't say I wish I'd seen more of Sam play this time round, because I do. I do wish I'd seen this time round. I thought he looked good when he played in his cameos, and I'm disappointed to see him leave the club. But I'm not linking that to conspiracy theory. Evidentially, the club have decided not to keep him. The reasons for that, I'm sure, will become clear. Hopefully, we're having a podcast with Michael and Jez. I know Michael did one with Michael Horton. He will be getting sick of answering the questions, because every time the question gets answered, the Sam Clucas fans don't get the answer they want. I don't know what's expected. Michael to come out and go, do you know what? Yeah, no, I didn't want to sign him. He's not going to do that, because one, my understanding is all signings go through the manager. And two, why on earth would you do that after you've offered the guy a coaching role as well? So it won't go away. Doesn't matter what I say here. Doesn't matter what anybody says in interviews going forward. There will always be people, I'm not talking about anyone on here. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll know more or less who I'm talking about. But there'll always be people who will just say Sam was treated appallingly. He was brought here under false pretenses. It's all guesswork. Unless I'll do it if Sam wishes to. I'll do an interview with him. I'd love to. And if he said to me, yes, I was brought here under false pretenses, then there you go. But as a professional, I don't think that he would do that either. And while liking a tweet does give an indication of a mindset and a frame of mind, it doesn't give a conclusive answer either. So I hope that kind of puts my position on Sam Clucas. I'm struggling to put comments on because I have to press about 3 buttons now, but I'm going to put a couple. So England CB says it's just what we saw in those cameos, in my opinion, was better than what McGrandles, Hamilton and Hackett were offering in their positions. I think Hackett is an unfair comparison. I think McGrandles was probably being played a little bit out of position. Conor McGrandles took an unfair amount of barracking towards the end of the season, from me included. But when you will look at the underlying numbers, he didn't give the ball away any more than many of the other players. I'll do an article on it, I think, because it's down to that perception, isn't it? If you're Conor McGrandles, you pick the ball up 20 yards from your own goal and slightly misplace a pass, gets noticed. If you're James Collins and you pick the ball up 20 yards from the opposition goal and lay a pass short, it doesn't get noticed as much. Conor spent a lot of the season, certainly the second half of the season, playing in what I would term to be an unfamiliar, well, not an unfamiliar, but not his proper position. For me, he's not that holding midfielder that Ethan Rahan is. He's more like an Ethan Hamilton, kind of more of a box-to-boxy player. So he was playing a little bit out of position. Look, I've always criticised, by the way, Conor for giving the ball away in bad areas. I criticised it. We played Wimbledon many moons ago on a cold Tuesday night, and he gave the ball away in front of his own area and then gave a penalty away on the back of it. So I can see where it comes from. Again, I'm not calling anybody out here, but I actually think that Conor did a lot more positive things this season that were probably not noticed. And it's confirmation bias. I'm guilty of it. England CB, who I'm referring to, I'm guilty of confirmation bias. If I think a player can't hit the cow's arse with a banjo and he puts a shot wide, there you go, Rob Street again. Whereas when he scores, you kind of, it doesn't erase everything you think, well, at least he's finally scored. And I have it from a couple of the guys behind me, Gav, obviously, Gav, if you're watching, with Jovan Makama. You know, Makama got, 3 assists and 4 goals in a month. And from behind me, it's what he should be doing. because the confirmation bias is when he's putting them wide, he's not good enough. So when he does do things that are good, he kind of go, well, what should we do? It's a really easy psychological trap to fall into. And I think to a degree, some of us did that with Grandals. With Ethan Hamilton, I think it's a little bit different. I felt really bad for Ethan this season because I'll be honest, I think Ethan Hamilton is one of the best players in our squad. On his day, I don't think there's many better. There's not many have the engine that Ethan has, the commitment that Ethan has. He's got a good range of passing. He is a goal threat. He's got assists in him. But ever since that injury at the end of last season, a year ago, he's just not quite got there. Took him a while to come back. I think when you come back and you arrive back in a first team environment with no pre-season in October or November, and rather than doing like you do all your normal training, but then you get in 10 minutes at the end of an EFL trophy game or the odd start here and there, it must be really difficult to get into your form. I talk about running, but the analogy is if I go out to run 20 miles, the first 3 miles are the worst. If I run 5K, the first 2K are the worst. They're the ones getting into it. Once you're into it, it's great. And I think that's why Ethan Hamilton and Rico, to a degree, we probably didn't see the best of them until later in the season. Rico, potentially, because he was at left wing back, potentially. And he's a little bit inconsistent. He's the type of player that when he's good, he's very good. When he's bad, he's just non-existent kind of thing. And I don't think he's better. He has more good games than he does bad games, but he's that type of player, that flying winger, the flicks, the tricks, the spacing behind. With Ethan Hamilton, there's not a huge difference in what he does week in, week out, or what he's expected to do week in, week out. He doesn't lack consistency, but it takes a lot of fitness. And I just don't think he ever really got into it until Huddersfield. He had one really good game. I think it was Leyton Orient. I might be wrong, at home. It was a game somewhere. He came on and he bossed it. He was great. And it was that one game. Neither side of it, he struggled a little bit, I think, to get into the games. And then Huddersfield, he was man of the match. And I think since then, he's probably one of our most consistent players in the last sort of 6 weeks or so. Lots and lots of time for Ethan. Big player for us, hopefully, next season. Wouldn't surprise me if he's the one that clubs were looking at bidding on. If you're Bolton or Huddersfield, something like that, and you need that energetic presence around the midfield, box to box, a little bit versatile as well, Ethan Hamilton's going to be your man. I was delighted when we signed him. I'd followed his career from Man United, I think he'd been at Rochdale, at Accrington, such a good footballer. So yeah, interesting. So I think that's everybody. That's the retained, that's the contracted players, and that is the those that are staying and those that are still in discussion. Let me see if there's any questions in the comments, because it turns out the dog's doing a full-length walk today, which is fascinating. So John Leonard says, surprised we signed up Bradshaw for so long, and I thought Rico was in the 1-year territory. There must be the most players we've ever had on a contract at the end of a season to show stability. Yeah, it does. So I think with Zach Bradshaw, there's a bit of the J Ben in it. It's like, if he's not expensive, you can almost afford to go, well, we think there's something in him. Let's see how he does. He's been out Tranmere. It hasn't really worked. It's got to be a League Two loan again this season. So he goes out again. Does it work? Does it not? You're kind of buying yourself a little bit of time. And like 20 years ago, that never happened at Lincoln. We signed project players like Dave Watley or Peter Folkes because we wanted them in our squad. They were our projects. We'd bring them on at 10 minutes at the end of our games. Whereas in League One, I think you've got to have players out on loan doing relatively well. Rob Street, JJ McKinnon, classic examples. Signed, not maybe to impact the team straight away, but on long enough deals to make sure that there's an opportunity for them if they are going to develop. A little bit like buying a raffle ticket, I suppose, for a raffle that's not taking place for 4 years. So I think with Zach, I can understand that. I thought Rico was 2 years with one, but a couple of months back, looked back at his signing announcement, and he was definitely a 3-year deal at the time. I thought Ethan Hamilton might be a 2 with one. But again, another long-term contract. I think Ethan Hamilton was called long-term, so it was a bit more ambiguous, but Rico was definitely 3. Let's have a look. So Harry Jackson said, I hope Smith would have stayed, possibly been good depth, played in his natural position, although the choice to leave was possibly due to not being in the first team squad. I just think, actually, when you look at the players we've got left, it's quite hard to see where we make signings without outgoings. You're talking mid-20s, our squad. Okay, there's players like the two boys who have just stepped up, Campson Kamara, Oshin Gallagher maybe, that you would imagine might go back out on loan. Jamie Pardington potentially, or Zach Gcott, one of the two. But what do we need? If we're playing 4-2-3-1, let's be honest, what do we need? A goalkeeper? No. We've got Wickens. Right back? No. We've got Dariqua. Centre backs? Well, if Adam Jackson's staying, Tom Hamer's staying, potentially Pordy, we don't know. Lewis Monsma at the minute is staying. You don't really need to sign a centre back. Will Lewis stay beyond the summer? 12 starts in the league? I don't know. If Pordy doesn't stay, then you've got two centre backs. Yes, then we need to sign one. And then you're looking at, I think anybody we're trying to bring in, it's got to be better than what we've currently got. Left back, absolutely. If Sean Rowan goes, we need one. If Sean Rowan doesn't go, we probably need one as well. As cover, but then again, you're signing cover. If Sean Rowan doesn't go, left back, left-sided centre back, makes things really tight across there. So that's why I can maybe see an outgoing. I don't know. Then you look across the midfield. Ethan Arahan almost certainly will go. So yes, we'd need to replace him. But then in terms of all those other midfielders, and this is where Ali Smith would come in, Ethan Hamilton, Tom Bayliss, JJ McKiernan, Conor McGrandles. It's a good little run of midfielders. Dom Jeffries, remember? Central midfielder. I mean, where do you put him? Do you put him at the left back position? Do you put him in the centre of midfield? I think with Ali Smith, the decision was always made. The whole conspiracy around Sam Clucas, I kind of have said, I don't entirely, I can see the foundations for it. Why are conspiracy theories not looking at the Ali Smith and going, well, he played nearly every single game up until he left the club. But then when he left the club, there was definitely no route back for him. Nobody's going, what's happened there? He went away to Colchester, had a decent chance, but came back and was never part of the Michael Skubala squad. I'm just surprised conspiracy theories don't get back on that. It proves you have to have sold sandwiches in Debenhams in order to be the subject of a conspiracy theory. Or probably played for like Greenbank or St Helens or something when you were younger. That's it. Keith Clifton. Morning, Keith. Hope you're well, pal. No doubt a fully fit Adam Jackson's an asset. I'm not convinced by House. I agree he's a hard worker, but doesn't contribute enough in terms of goals or assists. And then he pops up like he did against Stockport and was outstanding. So consistency, Keith, I agree 100% on. I've made it clear, I think, in my post-season analysis that for me, the consistency of 7 or 8 players in this squad was the difference between us being 11th or 6th. I don't think tactically, I don't think in terms of squad depth, and I don't think in terms of overall approach, we were far off the top 6 side. I think it was key moments. Said it a million times, but I'll say it again and I'll reel them off. And this is not intended to hang any players out to dry. But you think about 4 goals conceded at Barnsley where we gifted 3. You think about losing 3-2 at Leyton Orient where we gifted 2. They're 2 games we lost, we should have won, 6 points. You talk about a couple of Jovan misses. I might be wrong, Wrexham and potentially Stevenage. You talk about a Lewis Monsma miss from 6 yards out. You talk about obviously on Tendai's own goal, it comes off his arse, not really as much as of a mistake. But as soon as you start just picking up on those odd little bits, you're thinking, well, if it wasn't for Ethan Arahan being sent off at Bolton, a point. If it wasn't for Jovan popping that one over at Stevenage, there's another 2 points. I've already mentioned the 6 points from the Barnsley and the Leyton Orient games. So there's 9 points on the 61 that we already had. There's 70. That's how close it was. Individual moments, in my opinion. Individual moments. Late goals conceded. Huddersfield 2-0 up, 2-2. Charlton 2-0 up, 2-2. They're not even individual mistakes. Just games against really good sides that if you just held on for a little longer, another 4 points, suddenly you're on 74 points. And all I'm picking out is moments, seconds, fractions. 2 minutes in this game, 30 seconds in that game is the difference between 11th and 6th. from a budget of 17th. If we'd been 17th budget and finished 6th, Michael Skubala would have been the best manager in this division. As it was, Richie Wellens was the best manager in this division, then Skubala, then I think Gary Caldwell and Alex Ravel, in terms of overperforming the budget. And I will not take any person telling me that the budget is something that you can only talk about so much. It is the be-all and end-all. We all want the Ferrari, but the only people who can afford one are the ones with a budget. And when you sit side by side with Ferrari on the M5, it doesn't matter how much your budget is. If it hasn't stretched to a Ferrari, the likelihood is you're going to be in a shitter car. And you just have to make your driving skills count then. Sometimes driving skills just aren't enough. Hence the League One budget. Adam Butler says, when asked about Lucas, MS suggested 2 midfielders almost left in January. He was obviously one. Who are we thinking for the other one? I think I've already covered that. But for me, I would say that has to almost be Ethan Hamilton. Almost has to be. But it could be McGrandles. And McGrandles is highly thought of in football circles. He's a good footballer. You know, when Cambridge loaned him and wanted him back, their manager quite clearly said, we can't afford a player like Conor McGrandles. And I think they were below us in the budget table. So it speaks volumes. So I like him. I like Connor, but I do think it was probably Ethan Hamilton. Andy Brown says, would I look at Cohen Bramall? I'd smell him. That man smells incredible. No, not for me, because he's a left wing back. If we played in a 3, maybe. If we played in a 3 with a wing back, he might be able to be custom made for that role, probably. But in a 4 as a flat left back, defensively, I did always have a question about that. So. Stu Wells, let me show this one on stage, member of our team. Of all the contracted players, how many would you like to see stay and how many would you not be bothered to see move? And who would be your core players to build the team around? Great question. So, of the contracted players, there are probably 10 or 12, 10 maybe that you think, well, okay, that's maybe too many. 6, 7, 8 that could go out on loan. It wouldn't surprise me if JJ McKiernan went back out on loan. I really like JJ, unless there's a place for him kind of maybe out wide in that 3, he could be one that we look at another loan, but it'd have to be to a League One side. I think Rob Street, Freddie Draper, James Collins are our 3 number 9s. I think Ben House, Tom Bayliss, Jack Moylan, they'll play in the 10s. Possibly you've then got Hackett, McKiernan, McCarmer can play out on the flanks, Dom Jeffries as well. Would I like to see any of them leave? No, because I think for the grace of God, we were that far away from getting in the top 6. And people will call me deluded, but I don't care. So in an attacking sense, I'm not really sure I'd like anyone to leave. In fact, I don't think I want any of the contracted players really to leave until I know which ones have, if that makes sense. So until out of Ethan Arahan, Sean Rowan and Paudie O'Connor. Which ones do I think are key players for next season? Well, one I've not mentioned in one of those wide players. I think Eric Ring will have a breakout season this season. 3 goals from 12 starts. Every time he played, he tried to dip a shoulder. He's a potential fan's favourite. I liken him so often to Jeff Hughes. Jeff Hughes' second season at Lincoln, he was unplayable and earned a move to Bristol Rovers. I'd be looking at getting more time for Ring and McCarmer on the pitch. I think those 2 players in the wide positions, and then you can look at 60 minutes replacing them. But you've got to have the same power, the same pace, the same intensity when those players come off. That's the point. A couple of years ago under Mark Kennedy, we said we were praising the depth because when we took Danny Mandroiu off, you brought Ted Bishop on. It's the same style of player. You're getting the same again, but you're just getting fresh legs with 30 minutes to go. So do we bring in Joe Gardner? There's Rico to then drop in there, potentially JJ McKiernan, Dom Jeffries. I'd actually like to see Dom more centrally, personally. In the midfield, I'd probably like if Ethan Arahan goes, you've got to have another holding midfielder. I really like Charlie McNeil at Forest Green. I think he's the sort of midfielder that we would do well to be able to get. They bought him, I think, after missing out on Ethan Arahan. I really like that boy. Ethan Hamilton could be a key player for us. Tom Hamer will absolutely be a key player for us. I thought he was outstanding towards the end of the season. And remember, it seemed unusual for him to be playing as a 2 and a 4. Usually plays on the outside of a 3 or a wing back. So I like that. Tendai captain all day long. But again, you have then got to be thinking, well, we maybe then need some form of cover because Do we want to risk Tendai Saturday, Tuesday, when the Tuesday game is Man City kids in the Cup? Do we want to risk James Collins when, you've got Crawley away on a Tuesday and you've just been away at Blackpool on the Saturday? You've got to nurse James Collins through this because he'll be one of our key players. So I think that's probably it. In terms of move on, I'm not sure there'll be that many opportunities for Lewis. I really like Lewis. I don't know how many opportunities there'll be for him. Now we've got a 4 at the back, particularly if Pordy stays. So it could be interesting to see what happens with Lewis this season. And look, 1 or 2 of those players may be the subject of bids, and it might be that we go, okay, it's time to move on. You don't know quite. I think there might be some interest in Freddie Draper, especially if Walsall don't come up. If Walsall lose in the playoffs, could there be interest there in Fred? But then we give him a big contract. Rob Street, 12 goals for Doncaster. People are going to be knocking on our door about Rob for his 12 goals. If someone comes in and says, we'll offer you 250,000, do you take it when you paid, 30, 40,000 a season ago? I mean, it'd be an unpopular decision. Or do you say, right, you're backing up James Collins now, there you go. Jovan McCarmer, people are going to be watching him. Some fans might laugh at that, but people are going to be watching him. That little spell at the end of the season would have brought him to scouts' attention. And, we knew that Leeds United and Sheffield United were watching him before. They've both been impressed with him in the past. So, be really interesting. Really, really interesting. Right, let's have a look. See if there's any more questions. I agree with Josh. I always think it's important when I kind of disagree or make a counterpoint to somebody to also point out when I agree with them, because it shows that it's not, there's no agenda at all. Hamilton's one of our best midfielders, 100%. 100%. So you ask, Josh also asks, what did I miss about Zane? So Zane Okoro is a player who we have offered or we are in negotiations with. So we offered the 2 boys, Charlie Parks and Bola Okawoy. I hope I've said that right. My apologies if I haven't. So they got pro deals yesterday, and we're in contact with Zane Okoro to try and nail him down to 1. The fact we're in contract negotiations with him suggests that there's probably other interest as well, and it wouldn't be surprising, would it? So yeah, I think that would be really interesting. Josh says, would I get Rags back if Lewis or Pordy go? No, not a chance. Andy Brown, this has turned into quite fun, actually. Thank you for this. Would you try and convert Dom into the left-back role? Possibly. I think Dom Jeffries has got a host of potential roles he could play. I really like Dom. His attitude, I think, when he got taken off at Charlton probably was a little bit bad. And obviously he didn't play after that. He went off for his operation. I think having his operation early will work well for him, because if he can get back ready for pre-season, we might not see the Rico Ethan Hamilton hangover that we did this season in terms of getting back to full fitness. And that'll be hugely a help. I think there's some talk here about Dylan Duff. There we go. Dave Sandel. Will Dylan Duff be back? Hardly played for Chesterfield for a couple of months. Now, people are then saying he went permanently. Yes, he did. Now, here is where Dave may be thinking he did go permanently, but it's my understanding that we had a buyback clause on Dylan. So that if he had gone to Chesterfield and smashed it and we thought we'd made a mistake, we would get first option at the fee that we received to buy him back this summer. I don't think that'll happen, by the way, but that was just the scope of the deal. So I think that there was more of a chance of him coming back than anyone else we've sold properly in the past, but I genuinely don't think it will happen. Ironically, the 4-2-3-1 setup would be the one that suits Dylan far more than the 3-5-2, because again, for me, he wasn't a left wing back. I liked Dylan, by the way. Nice lad, direct. But when you think, or when I've just been talking about Dom Jeffries, Eric Wynn, Jovan McCarmer, Rico Hackett, JJ McKeon, and maybe Joe Gardner back on loan, does Dylan Duffy get a game? Probably not. Stu Wells says, how much training have you done for Saturday's tournament? So we're having a pool tournament, some of the Stacey West boys, some of my mates. We had a pool night last night. I was on fire. But, Stu, it appears that there's only about 3 people drinking. So many people have decided they're taking it seriously now. Dave might not be drinking. Chris might not be drinking. My mate Matt's come in. He's not drinking. Dale's not drinking. Like, Jesus Christ, I'm going to be the only one drinking. So I'm not going to win it, because by the time 4 or 5 o'clock comes around, I'll be smashed, mate. And Josh, again, do you know what? This is what I respect. the sort of response I respect most in Lincoln City fans. I slated McCarthy at the start, but boy, did he make me eat my words. An opinion should always be delivered from a position of willingness to change. Always be delivered from a position of willingness to change. That's my opinion. And it's probably, ironically, the only opinion of mine I won't change. So there you go. The exception that proves the rule. If I say something about a player and I see something that goes against that, then I'll say that. No agenda. If I like a player and he does well, I'll defend him. If I like a player and he does badly, sometimes, like I did with Dean Cropper, you have to admit defeat. And if I don't like a player who stands up to be counted, and I think Rob Street, probably someone I didn't really like when I first saw him, but he's gone away to Doncaster and done brilliantly. You can never ever hold your opinion like an anchor. It should be like a carrier bag floating in the wind. No, that's different, because then that changes depending on conditions. Anyway, bad analogies is probably the best place to end this chat. My sincere apologies to my mate Pete, who's just joined. Dave might not be drinking, Dave. Yeah, there's actually a story about it, Pete, and I've got about 10 minutes left on my walk, so after this I will ring you. My apologies, because I did say I didn't know whether I'd be free or not this morning. Inevitably, I am free, but I've spent 46 minutes talking to 50 or 60 Lincoln City fans about the retained list, which, one, is a lot longer than I intended, two, probably steals all the thunder from the podcast later on today, and three, kind of goes against what I told you I would do. Ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, it has been a pleasure. It's a windy, chilly one up here in the Wolds today, which is respite for a ginger man like me who managed to have a suntan towards the end of January because of all my running. Remember, it's all right to disagree. It's all right to have your opinions, but just be kind to each other. If you don't agree with someone, you're not right. They're not wrong. They're not right. You're not wrong. It's just opinion. Treat each other with respect. We're all imps. And on that note, up the imps.